Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, great. It is now just a moment or two after 7 o'clock. I'll call the December 9th, 2024 East Providence Planning Board meeting to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'll recognize for the record that Mr. Crook is present, Mr. Miller is present, Ms. Rockwell is present, Mr. Gagnon is present, and Ms. Wilkes is present. I'll recognize the quorum. Item 3 on the agenda is the approval of planning board minutes. Minutes of the August 19th, 2024, August 26th, 2024, September 9th, 2024, October 15th, 2024, and November 20th, 2024 meetings enclosed in our packets. They're all in appropriate order to me. Any questions, comments, changes?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman. Whoa, I'm a little bit loud here. With regard to two of the reports, here we go. October 15th, I'm listed as being present, and I was not. So we can strike my name. And I did also have comments with regard to the most recent set. Here we go. Is this it? Yes, no, on November 20th. There were several extensive discussions. This is in the middle of the page where it starts with Joe Botello. Of 82 Plymouth Road. And the record states, him saying, further, the nursing home is an abandoned non-conforming use. I think we need to modify that and state that it is, in his opinion, an abandoned non-conforming use, since that was the subject of the discussion. And also related to the same paragraph, last sentence, he informed the board that he insisted that the property is not vacant, right, but rather abandoned. That was also part of the same discussion. Also, Mr. Dorsey, in the next paragraph, I think we should point out for the record that he did rebut the assumption that the building had been abandoned, in as much as he was the receiver. And that was something else that was on the record. And lastly, I think we should acknowledge that Vice Chair Christopher Grant recommended that, to the greatest degree possible, the recommendations of Attorney Stephen Seipel be added to the provisions. And I seconded that motion. And in fact, it was done.
Yeah, I was not at that meeting. So
Right. Interpretation. We have anybody else?
Any issue making those modifications?
No.
All right, so is there a motion?
I don't even need a mic. So,
So moved.
uh,
To incorporate, Mr. Crook's corrections as stated.
So I've been seconded.
Motion by Mr. Miller.
Aye.
The next item on the agenda, under new business, is item A, 350 Taunton Avenue. It's a request for preliminary plan approval, extension for property located at 330, 350, 354 Taunton Avenue. That's at map 306, block 1, parcel 12.1, 13, and 14. The owner is One Neighborhood Builders. Keith?
Mr. Chairman, on December 11th, 2023, the board approved a preliminary plan submission for this application at 350 Taunton Ave, combine the three subject properties into one parcel and develop a 144-unit apartment development. At the time of preliminary plan approval in 2023, the regulations allowed a 1-year initial vesting for preliminary plan approvals. Since the state law changed since then, it's now 2 years, but they are vested into this 1-year approval. So therefore, they're requesting a 1-year extension of their preliminary plan application. And they have already submitted materials for final plan approval to our department, which will be before you probably in January. So our department recommends that the planning board grant the extension request for a period extending 1 year that will extend the vesting to December 9th, 2025. And the applicant's attorney, Ken McGonigal, is here if there's any questions.
McGonigal, anything you want to add?
Mr. Chair. Um, Not much.
Considering.
I don't. As Mr. Burns said, our development team is working closely with Dominic and he, and we hope to be very, I think we're very close to a certificate of completion for final plan. We're not there yet, but we're getting there. And Michelle Blue is with me tonight. This is her project at One Neighborhood. And we're going forward well. So we hope you'll consider giving us the extension.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from board members?
Just a question for our director. Is there anything pending from our standpoint that we need to do to help them get this through?
They're just, getting together their state approvals is the main thing that they're getting together for this final plan application. Normally, final plan applications don't come before you, but it was a condition of your preliminary plan approval.
Right. I would just say that this is a very important project for the city. And anything that we can do to make sure that this moves smoothly, I think we should endeavor. I'll move for the acceptance of the extension.
Second.
A motion by Mr. Crook, seconded by Mr. Miller, to approve the requested 1-year extension of the vesting of the preliminary plan. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? You guys have it. Thank you. Next item on the agenda, item B1 and B2. Jeffrey Matus seeks permission to subdivide property located at 25 Orange Street, further recognized as map 302, block 4, parcel 1, via a minor subdivision in accordance with the Unified Development Plan Review procedural process, necessitating dimensional relief for having a deficient overall lot depth, lot area, and maximum building lot coverage. There's also a minor subdivision preliminary plan to subdivide parcel 1 into 2 single-family residential dwellings in accordance with Article 8, entitled Minor Land Development Projects, Minor Subdivisions of the Land Development and Subdivision Regulations. Council?
Good evening, members of the board. Attorney Jake D'Amico appearing on behalf of the applicant this evening. Jeffrey Matus and his father, Louis Matus. We're presenting a preliminary plan submission, as the chairman said, for a minor subdivision of 25 Orange Street. proposal is to subdivide an existing 9,600 square foot lot into two 4,800 square foot lots for the development purposes of two single-family homes. This property is located in an R4 zone for low-density residential use. So the proposed use is in conformance with that district. Due to the lot's existing dimensions, we do have to request a couple variances tonight. For lot area, we have a required lot area of 5,000 square feet. We're proposing 4,800 square feet, variance of 4%. Lot depth, we have 80 feet where required 100 feet is required, variance is for 20 feet. The building coverage, we're proposing 25.5%, where a maximum of 25% is required, a very minimal, half a percentage point there. The variances are justified due to the unique characteristics of the lot's original 80-foot depth, which is beyond the applicant's control. The variances, again, are minimal and align with the existing neighborhood, where similar sized lots are common. The proposed subdivision maintains adequate lot coverage, lot width and frontage, conforms to the other zoning requirements and supports the comprehensive plan goals of promoting single-family homes in low-density residential areas. The slight increase in building coverage, that half a percentage point that I mentioned, is reasonable and consistent with the neighbors or the neighboring properties. So overall, we feel as though, and I believe staff is under the impression that the relief requested represents the least deviation necessary for reasonable use of the property without negatively impacting the community and the surrounding areas. As part of the application, we're also requesting waivers for sidewalks and granite curbing. The justification for that is we're not within that half mile from a school. There's low pedestrian and vehicular traffic there, and we don't believe it will compromise public safety at all there. It's consistent with the comprehensive plan, supports low-density residential development, maintains residential character of the neighborhood, and promotes orderly development in line with community goals. There's adequate access there. The environmental impact is none at all. If not, it'll be improved by the drainage improvements, manage runoffs. And the subdivision supports consistent and responsible residential growth. In summary, the requested variances and waivers are minimal, justified, and consistent with the neighborhood and comprehensive plan. The proposed subdivision resolves the property's existing constraints and supports the development of two single-family homes. I have with me the applicant tonight. If we do have any specific questions, if the board has any questions, we'd be happy to answer them.
Any questions from board members of the applicant's counsel or the applicant at this point? I'm going to give the public an opportunity to be heard at the end. It's our practice to do that on all matters. Why don't we hear the staff report at this point, Keith?
Sure. So we reviewed the application, sent it to different departments for their comments, received comments from the city engineer, who had requested additional details regarding stormwater, and the zoning officer, who verified the variances that were being requested. As the applicant stated, the sidewalk waiver and curbing waiver is being requested here. It does fit within the guidelines of waivers spelled out in the subdivision regulations, not being within 100, half a mile of a public or private pool, not being in reasonable proximity to major public or private facilities, not being located in an area with high vehicular traffic volumes, where there'd be a likelihood of significant danger to pedestrians. This is a unified development review application, which this board is a bit new to since the change in state law. The variances requested are for lot area, lot depth, and lot coverage. And the specific measurements are spelled out in the plan and in the report. We reviewed the consistency with the comprehensive plan, looking at all elements of that, and our conclusion was that it's consistent with the existing land use patterns in the area and is consistent with the land use element of the comprehensive plan. And also that the subdivision we found met the purposes of the subdivision regulations and the required findings there. So in making any motions here, the board would have to grant the variances first before the subdivision application. With the variances in the dimensional relief requested, it's our department's opinion that the relief will not alter the general character of the surrounding area or impair the intent of the zoning ordinance or comprehensive plan. The neighborhood around the proposed subdivision is zoned for single family and currently contains many single family homes along with multiple duplexes. Provided that petitioner demonstrates a hardship to the board's satisfaction, the department doesn't object to the requested relief. And the same with the subdivision application itself. There are 4 recommended motions in the staff report. The first to enter certain documents into the record. The second would be a motion to approve requested dimensional variances. The third to grant these requested subdivision waivers, and the fourth to grant conditional preliminary subdivision approval.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any questions from board members of anyone on the planning department?
I am Mr. Brines. Questions with regard to this. I'm looking at page, there's no page. Oh, there it is on top. Page 7. It seems to me the crux of the issue here is the paragraph toward the bottom where you say, it is the opinion of this department that the requested dimensional relief will not alter the general character of the surrounding area or impair the intent of the zoning ordinance or comprehensive plan. I presume that you're basically talking about the lot sizes throughout the neighborhood. And I visited the site and saw what your folks saw as well. But I'm wondering to what degree of analysis you went through to come to that conclusion. I mean, did you measure lot sizes?
Yeah, we did look at lot sizes in the surrounding area. Page 9, there's a summary of that here. We're within 200 feet of the parcel. There are multiple parcels that don't meet the minimum lot area of the R4 zone, including a 2-family dwelling on 3,200 square feet abutting the parcel,
Yeah.
single-family dwelling on a 3,200 square feet parcel, 2-family dwelling on a 6,400 square foot parcel, 2-family on a 3,775 square foot parcel. So the proposed single-family dwellings of 4,800 each didn't seem unusually small for that area.
And related to the same issue, I don't see any compunction on our part to be granting this development. It sounds to me like it's a matter of choice. Right? I mean,
It is with the variance. It is a
Right.
matter of choice of whether you feel that there's hardship.
well, there's one variance now, right, for the 80 feet. But now in approving this, we're adding a second one.
Oh, there's 3 being requested in general.
Right.
Yeah, lot area, lot depth, and more than allowed building coverage. And when I say 3, it's really, in a sense, 6, because it's those things for both of the
Mm-hmm.
lots.
Right. Thank you.
Any other questions from board members? We'll give you the last word there,
I would just,
but I'm going to give it up, the public an opportunity to see if anybody else has any questions first. Then, Mr. D'Amico, I will give you the last word. Sir, you had something you wanted to say? You want to swear?
there'll be one for each parcel. Yep. I believe we have 18 feet. Is that correct? 18? We should be able to get 2 spaces. There's a garage and then you have the driveway. We'll probably have 1 car in the garage. There's a garage. Yes. It's in conformance with zoning requirements. I don't have a copy of the plan with me. I should, but we have an extra, if we have an extra one. Okay. Looks like we have 15.5 feet on the house to the left, on the corner lot, and in between 8.5 feet. Lot side yard is 8 feet is needed. We have 8.5 feet, so we have an additional half a foot. So it's right there, but it meets the zoning requirement. 8.5 feet as 8 is required. And then on the other parcel, we have 12 feet on each side. Well, no, I completely understand your concerns. We're proposing that we'll have 2 parking spaces, 1 in the garage, 1 in the driveway. If there's, families that need to park on the street and let somebody else pull in before they, when somebody else gets home, I think that's just a reasonable accommodation that most people have to deal with. Yeah.
We're going to do one person at a time, please.
Just to clarify, are you saying that the police have been putting barricades up?
Whoever put up barricades. Stop it.
Hmm. Right, well, you're adding an additional home. So obviously that's 1 or 2 more vehicles.
They purchased it's two residential, 2 substandard lots of record that they own, and they should be able to get the beneficial use of those lots, which is to build a single-family home in conformance with their best efforts with the city to develop it reasonably. I think that's what the applicant's trying to do, and I don't think what we're asking for is um, a lot of-
Sir, are you implying that there's no use of the property right now? It's got an occupied home on it,
there is a use of the property right now.
right?
Sure, I'm just going to have you, and yeah, we're going to need to swear everybody into. I don't think we had you sworn when you testified earlier, but stand up and raise your right hand. It's the testimony you've provided, the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. And what was your name and your address for the record? Thank you, Tom. Sure. Swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. Okay, name and address for the record? All right. Is there anybody else in the public who wishes to be heard, ma'am? Sir, this woman had her hand up first. Solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. What's your name and address, please? Gideon? Is there anything you want to add with regard to the actual issue that's before the board tonight? Okay. Anything else? Sir? Solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? I'll take that as a yes. Go ahead, Mr. Reed, the floor is yours. Go ahead, Mr. Reed, the floor is yours. All of us. Still. You-
Excuse me, if you can use the microphone, please.
Was it Keith?
You're a lawyer.
Anything else, Mr. Reed?
Yeah, it's here.
Thank you, Mr. Reed.
I'd like to ask you local residents a question or two. Do I understand right from what you're saying? You would like to see this house renovated and repaired. You don't want to see it fixed at all? So you want to see it?
Minton down. He moved in, he was an attorney. And many times.
The siding is down on one side of the building. I guess it was a little clumsy. Okay. Okay, fine. But you do understand if we rejected this application, we can't compel the developer to, rebuild the house to your specifications. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from board members? If not, Mr. D'Amico, I told you I'd give you the last word.
That's it. If the board has any questions for myself or the applicant, I'd be happy to answer them.
All right, any discussion or further questions from any board members? If not, we ready to move to some votes? Okay, hearing none. The first motion I'll entertain is with respect to the admission of the documents requested by the planning department into the record. That would be the planning department staff recommendation with attachments dated November 6th, 2024. The October 11th, 2024 memorandum from Mr. Skadberg, and the October 24th, 2024 memorandum from Mr. Pimentel. Is there a motion to accept those documents into the record?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Miller, seconded by Ms. Lopes. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. What is your pleasure, ladies and gentlemen, with regard to the requested dimensional variances?
Mr. Chairman, I'm not going to vote for it. I will vote no.
And just to remind board members that regardless of whether there is a favorable motion or an unfavorable motion with regard to the requested dimensional relief, the actual rationale in light of the four criteria that are all set forth in detail in the staff's recommendation need to be addressed.
Are you saying that acceptance of the documents is a de facto approval?
No, what I'm saying is that if you are going to make an affirmative motion to reject the applicant's request for dimensional relief, you have to say why they haven't met the requisite standards identified in the staff memorandum. I think they hit the elements. I would support a motion to grant the requested dimensional relief. I feel differently and you make a motion, you may prevail on that motion or not, I don't know. But either way, the substance of the motion has to articulate the reason.
I say, yes, I recall now. My point of view is quite simple and direct. We're looking at a situation in which the property right now has one variance and we're increasing the number of variances to 6. For no real, as I can see, other benefit.
Did you want to be heard, Mr. D'Amico? No, it looked like you had something.
I just think that there's a significant benefit. I mean, as you said, there's a property there that's dilapidated and as the residents have said, it, you know, should have been condemned or was condemned, is in terrible shape. This gives them the opportunity to get in there and put something, get some housing in a much needed environment where, you know, single family homes are needed in this state. And to get a good developer in there who's willing to work with neighbors, and they made some concessions, some comments about putting up, you know, privacy fences. I think those are would, I'm sure he would if that was something that, you know, would be discussed. I'm sure he'd be happy to. And get the, which is
Sir, ma'am, I'm going to ask the comments to be directed through the chair, please, in order to have as orderly a meeting as possible. We need to direct our discussion through. Are you making a motion, Mr. Crook, or are you, or just simply?
I'm sorry, that was my rationale for voting to disapprove of this application.
Want to make sure we're clear, either are you actually making a formal motion
Formal motion to disapprove.
to deny the request for dimensional relief?
Yes.
All right, is there a second to that motion? Going once, going twice. Hearing none, the motion will fail for a want of. Is there an alternative motion?
An alternative motion would be to include the fence that they would like for privacy.
And that could be added as one of the conditions to the subdivision approval on page 10.
Mr. D'Amico, does your client have any issue with that?
no, it does not.
Another one, by the way, could be the zoning officials note that was addressed earlier that I don't see on the plan, which is that he asked that the plan should contain notation that no further building improvements to include any accessory structure such as a shed shall be permitted. And that's so that, you know, because they're at the maximum building coverage, so any future buyers don't get the property and then are surprised that they can't build a shed there because of that.
Yeah,
That would be
and
put in the deed.
It
would be in the,
included subdivision approval, which.
Yeah, it would be in the subdivision approval, the notice of decision.
Right.
The other thing is, we talked about this before about the sidewalk, not the sidewalks, the curbs.
So that's a separate issue which we can debate. Would have to come after the request for dimensional relief is either granted or rejected. If it's rejected, then if it's granted, we would move on to a discussion of the request for waivers and sidewalks and curbing, and then a request for consideration of the proposed subdivision in that order.
Okay.
So,
Can I make a motion?
you absolutely can make a motion. Yeah,
Okay.
and I'll just articulate my thoughts on the thing to the extent it helps or doesn't help in terms of where I'm going. I think that the relief they're asking for is de minimis. It's absolutely small amount of zoning relief that's being requested. This is undoubtedly going to be an improvement to the current situation. It is perfectly consistent with the size of the lots in the area. And it is, in my opinion, an overall improvement to the area. So, to the extent that the applicant is not objecting to the request for inclusion of a privacy fence, I'm also supportive of that as well. So I think it hits all four of the required elements necessary for granting variances, and I support them.
Mr. Chairman, also including the prohibition on the accessory structures.
That's a recommendation of the zoning official, and with that as well, and I have no problem as a condition of subdivision approval.
I would approve that.
And just to be clear, all of this appears to be the result of the way this was platted in the first one. I've already given an opportunity to the public to speak. We're moving on now to consideration of the merits of the board's time.
So now, is there a motion on the floor?
I can't affirmatively move.
I would like to make a motion that we approve dimensional variances, but adding a fence for the neighbor for privacy
As a condition of
as a condition.
And the basis being that the four elements necessary for dimensional relief have been hit,
Yes,
including the hardship shown.
yes.
So moved.
I would amend that and make sure that we record no accessory structures.
Yeah, I just want to,
Wouldn't
Perhaps
that be a
the-
condition of subdivision approval?
yeah, I would think so. I guess it could be either one, but because it does really. But I recommend too, for the privacy fence, adding some language, 5 foot tall privacy fence. They'll be added along the property lines with neighbors.
Is it okay to include both of those elements as conditions of approval, both of the request for dimensional relief and of the request for?
I think so. I think that would doubly cover it.
Fair?
Hmm.
So that motion was seconded by Mr. Miller, is that correct? Okay, so a motion by Ms. Rockwell, seconded by Mr. Miller to grant the request for dimensional variances. All those in favor, with the two additional requirements we talked about, the no additional accessory structures, and the inclusion of the 5-foot privacy fence that was discussed here. All those in favor of that motion, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? The ayes have it. The next issue is the request to grant the subdivision waivers. Request for a waiver with respect to both sidewalk and granite curbing requirements. I don't know that I've heard any opposition to the staff's recommendation that the three elements required by the regulations are met, that the subdivision is not located within a half mile of a public or private school. It's not located in reasonable proximity to a major public or private facility. And it's not located within an area with high vehicular traffic volumes where there would be a significant likelihood of danger. Do you have any, you want to be heard specifically, Mr. D'Amico, on that issue?
No, I read staff's recommendation and I agree.
Comments or questions from board members on that issue and the request for waiver?
I would just add to that that it also complies with the nature of the neighborhood.
Okay, is there a motion with respect to that request?
So moved.
Did,
Motion by Mr. Crook, seconded by Ms. Rockwell with regard to the request for waiver of sidewalk and curbing requirements. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. And by the way, Keith, just as a housekeeping matter, before we vote on the subdivision request. The staff had recommended that the dimensional relief be expressly subject to certain conditions of approval, including that any and all necessary permits for the relief be obtained, that the failure to obtain the requisite permits within 6 months would result in expiration of the approval, that the approval is subject to strict compliance to the submitted site plan, and that all conditions of approval of the preliminary application will also apply as conditions of granting the requested dimensional relief.
That's right. Those are, should have mentioned those. Those are standard conditions. Granting dimensional relief.
Do you want an affirmative vote from the board articulating those?
That might be helpful if it wasn't included before.
Just so, to the extent that it was not expressed before, motion now to make those conditions expressed.
So,
Yeah, motion by Mr. Miller, seconded by Ms. Rockwell. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. And the last motion we'll entertain is with respect to the request for conditional preliminary approval of the subdivision, with subject obviously to the conditions that are set forth.
Make a motion
And also to include, by the way, the prohibition on accessory structures.
on the fence.
There's a fencing. Second.
Motion by Ms. Rockwell, seconded by Mr. Miller. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you very much for your participation. Good luck. Next item on the agenda is items C1, C2, and C3. Michael R., and I mean no offense by this if I say the name incorrectly, Jinlin Cavaco, seek permission to subdivide property located at 11-19 Weldon Avenue, 6 Short Street, further recognized as map 206, block 13, parcel 5, via a minor subdivision in accordance with the Unified Development Plan procedural process, resulting in relief from lot area, lot depth, side, front yard, and rear yard setbacks, as well as exceeding the maximum building and impervious lot coverage and failing to meet the off-street parking requirements. We also have a request to subdivide property, the same parcels, via a minor subdivision in accordance with the Unified Development Plan Review procedural process, resulting in the need for a special use permit to use the existing 3-family dwelling in an R6 zoning district. And lastly, we have a request for minor subdivision preliminary plan approval to subdivide parcel 5 into 2 parcels, each containing 1 residential structure in accordance with Article 8 titled Minor Land Development Projects and minor subdivisions of the land development and subdivision regulations. Mr. D'Amico, either you like the view from where you're standing or you're a frequent flyer.
It's not too bad. I don't mind it at all.
You representing the applicant on this as
I
well?
am, yes.
Okay.
The Cavacos, Michael and Jen, who unfortunately could not be here this evening. We were scheduled for last month's meeting. We're here tonight. I'm here tonight on their behalf. We're presenting, as you said, a preliminary plan submission for a minor subdivision on Weldon Avenue and Short Street. The property currently contains 2 separate residential structures, as you were saying, 3-family residence as well as a single-family residence. The goal really is to subdivide this to create 2 distinct parcels, so each home is located on its own lot. This will correct the nonconformity of having 2 principal dwelling structures on 1 lot. There are some variances that we will need. There's quite a bit, but what I'd like everyone to keep in mind is this is already existing. There's no additional work being done. The only additional work that is being done is to address some of the concerns that the city has with draining some driveways. So there's a list of these variances here. Front yard setbacks for parcel A, which is the property on Weldon, the frontage on Weldon Avenue, has 7 feet, 7.5 feet, and 7.8 feet, where 15 feet is required. Parcel B has 1 foot, where 15 feet required. Again, those are the existing improvements. We have a rear yard setback for parcel A of 8.9 feet where 25 feet is required. Lot coverage, 25 feet, or excuse me, 25% is maximum. We have 37% for parcel A, 29% for parcel B. The parking is limited as well. Parcel A has 2 spaces where 4 is required, and parcel B is 0 spaces where 2 is required. The lot area for lot B, or excuse me, parcel B is 2,127 square feet, where 5,000 is required. And the lot depth is 66.49 feet, where 100 feet is required. Like I said, these variances are necessary because of the existing placement of the structures, which were built before current zoning requirements. The subdivision respects the character of the neighborhood, where similar non-conforming setbacks and parking constraints are common. It simply introduces a lot line without changing the built environment or increasing the building footprint at all. The three-family dwelling is a pre-existing use, which is consistent with surrounding multifamily properties. No new units or uses are being proposed or added. The proposal maintains the current land use pattern and addresses the hardship caused by historical conditions without negatively impacting the neighborhood. The special use permit, we are requesting a special use permit to allow the continued use of the three-family dwelling on parcel A. Again, this use is pre-existing and consistent with the surrounding neighborhood, which includes other multifamily properties. The subdivision is consistent with the comprehensive plan, which designates this area as mixed use. This designation supports both single-family and multifamily dwellings. And the subdivision maintains the residential character of the neighborhood. And it resolves a longstanding nonconformity with those multiple structures on one lot. The proposed subdivision meets the requirements of section 5.4 of the subdivision regulations. There's adequate access. Both properties have frontage on public streets, Weldon and Short Street. There's no significant environmental impact. There's a slight improvement with the inclusion of the dry wells. The subdivision promotes orderly growth by legally separating the 2 existing lots for homes, encouraging investments and owner occupancy. In summary, the subdivision will correct a non-conforming condition. And it ensures consistency with the comprehensive plan and subdivision regulations. And the requested variances and special use permit are minimal and justified by the existing property layout and the current use. With that,
So I don't know whether this is better directed to you or to the planning department, which we have not yet heard from. But I think I understand what's going on here, but do you have any color to offer in terms of how the situation came to be in the first place? That that two properties are existing on a single lot?
I think the use was just, it was constructed before the zoning ordinance was even in effect. So when the zoning ordinance went into effect, it was already existing, and therefore it continued as such since.
Short of actually, no work, as I understand it, is contemplated with this proposal.
Well, the single-family dwelling was in rough shape. So they've done some significant work to improve the property.
Not changing the footprint.
No.
And so then short of the dimensional relief that's being requested and short of actually altering the building footprint, there's no other way to cure this problem?
There's no other way to cure this problem, and by doing what we're doing, it will fortunately give people an opportunity for owner occupancy of that single-family home. As of right now, it's a difficult property to finance with how it's structured, and it would be considered commercial because of the 3 units and the accessory use of that single-family home. By separating them, selling that single-family home independently, we're going to get somebody owner to occupy that property, that owns that property. And same thing with the 3-family. It opens up a lot of financing possibilities for potential owner-occupied situation where, like myself, you
Can you imagine the title issues they've had to date?
hopefully we can
Fair enough. Keith?
Yeah, our report looked at these issues here, and as Attorney D'Amico stated, this is another unified development review application. It's the first that this board has seen the special use permit application. Um, Normally, if a development, if someone came with a subdivision idea that had this many variances and a house on a 2,000 something square foot lot, it probably wouldn't be something we'd support. But in this case, it is dealing with the issue of the two houses on one lot, one of them being a three-family. So, I think it has been the practice of the department to recommend in these cases that variances be granted that can lead to the result of separating the two parcels out from each other. We found this to be consistent with the comprehensive plan, especially since nothing new is going to be developed here or expanded upon. We found it to be consistent with the subdivision regulations, general purposes, and required findings. And the specific dimensional relief needed is needed on starting on page 6 of the report. There's also the special use permit that would be required, which is for, basically it's for, as a zoning official put it, the intensification of the three-family by reducing its lot size. It's the opinion of the department that the requested relief won't alter the general character of the surrounding area or impair the intent of the zoning ordinance or comprehensive plan, since a three-family dwelling and single-family dwelling exists today and no new housing units are proposed. The neighborhood does contain pre-existing non-conforming multifamily homes and single-family homes. Provided the petitioner demonstrates a hardship to the board's satisfaction, the department doesn't object to the relief. And there's recommended motions in the report on page 8. First one is the motion to enter documents into the record. Motion to approve the requested variances. We should probably have a separate motion, although it's not listed that way, for the approval of the special use permit that's requested, which would make the fourth one the motion to grant conditional preliminary subdivision approval. The dimension relief does have those same 3 perfunctory stipulations on page 11. And the subdivision approval motion, we're recommending the 5 conditions on page 11, which the paraphrase is that all comments from the city engineering department shall be addressed prior to final plan approval, and the outstanding property taxes and municipal fees are paid. Title block of the preliminary plan revised to indicate final plan status. Final plans are based upon preliminary plans, and that the proposal shall meet all applicable city, state, and federal regulations and requirements.
So Keith, just for housekeeping purposes, is the requested motion of the planning board with regard to the special use permit to authorize issuance, to issue a special use permit, to allow use of the existing three-family dwelling in an R6?
It is to,
Is that the way to phrase that?
yeah, it's basically to approve the special use permit for alteration of non-conforming uses. And on page 10 of the report, it talks about the 2 criteria that are listed in the zoning regulations for the board to consider.
That's the non-conforming use though, right? It's to allow allow use of the three families in the R6 zone.
Right, yeah.
Everyone clear on that? First item would be with regard to admission of the documents into the record. Second would be with regard to the requested variances. The third would be with regard to the request for a special use permit to allow the non-conforming use to continue. And the fourth would be on the subdivision. Is that more or less correct?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, I just have a point to clear up the record. It's come to our attention, the application is for 11-19 Weldon Avenue. I believe the tax assessor has this listed as 11 Weldon. It does not comprise 19 Weldon. That is the address of an abutter. So just to clarify the address on the application, it's not 11-19. It might be 11-15. I'm not sure.
Where's the error? Is it in the application?
Yeah, I believe we got it right off the application, said 11-19. The abutter who lives at 19 Weldon is here.
Any issue with that, Mr. D'Amico, or with Mr. Bottolaro?
Yes, it looks like when they prepared the survey, they just listed that as the address. I don't know if it makes sense to just reference the parcel numbers, the actual tax ID numbers.
I think we can probably grant an oral request to modify the application.
Yeah. So we'll modify the application to include the address of 11 Weldon Avenue and 6 Short Street, which is identified as map 206, block 13, parcel 5, the tax assessor's database.
Any objection from any members of the planning board to that administrative?
I just have a question of the logistics of this. Aren't we, in doing this, also establishing a second address? There's two addresses now. Number 11 and number whatever.
Number 19 is an existing address at one of the abutters.
They did have it. Right, okay, no.
It's a 6 short.
That's how they'll be listed. Okay, fine. Okay, thanks.
Making clear that the application. Need a vote to that effect?
So yeah, do we need a motion to correct the address on record?
I don't believe we do. I promised the abutter that we would take care of that tonight on the record. I don't think the question was raised whether we needed to renotice it. I don't believe
think it-
that's necessary because everyone who needs to be aware of the meeting has been notified. All the abutters within 200 feet have been notified.
That makes sense. As a condition of subdivision. Okay, any questions from board members of either the planning department or the applicant? I know we have at least one interested member of the public that wants to be heard. Or any others? Ma'am? Promise sort to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Your name and address for the record, please?
If we can take a look at the report, I believe it would be 2 spots per unit, if I'm not mistaken. And we have 2 spots there shown on the plan, so that would make 4 spots.
Do you guys, do you know the answer to this?
I think it's just 2 spots required per unit. Let me see here. Yeah, I mean, the specific relief requested was for parcel 1 is failing to meet the 4 off-street parking spaces required pursuant to section 19-284 because they only have 2.
Chairman. So I'm Dominic, I work in the planning department. I had reviewed this exact question with our zoning officer, Ed Pimentel, and he had confirmed the calculation with off-street parking spaces for a 3-family. It's, I forget the exact calculation off the top of my head, but I assumed it was 6.2, so I looked at this, but it's actually 4. I think it's based on, within a 3-family, it's 2 and then plus like some fraction of a space for the 3 families. And then you get into different parking calculations for separate multifamily or for a single family home. But in this case, our zoning officer reviewed the application and confirmed the zoning relief requested was accurate.
It has how many?
2.
It
2.
is 4. Yes. Does that answer your question, ma'am? Ma'am, I just have a question. You mentioned you live in Seacon? You rent the house? Is that the letter, the November 10th, 2024 letter? Okay, and you're asking that that be included in the planning department's record? All right. Is there more than one copy, or is it just this one? I'm going to pass it around then, so members have an opportunity. So I understand all those points, except that if nothing happened, nothing is going to change anyway. Thank you very much. The board members have any questions or comments? Mr. D'Amico, I'll give you the last word. Nothing else? I'm sensitive to the concerns that were raised by the abutting neighbor, but to me, this appears to be the short of actually reconfiguring the buildings themselves, which have existed for quite some time. This appears to me to be the most reasonable way of correcting an obvious problem with these buildings on a single lot. There's nothing that's going to be worsened as a result of relief that's currently before the board. Okay.
I said I disagree with our chairman on this. I feel that the person that bought that knowing that there were two buildings on that lot. And it is non-conforming. It was probably some family thing that was done 100 years ago. But you bought that property knowing that the buildings were there. And you basically want to subdivide it so you can flip. I feel like that building doesn't belong there. It's 2,000 square feet. Where are we going?
To avoid the need for dimensional relief, we require the building owner to tear one of them down. I mean, that doesn't seem like an appropriate solution.
Okay, but he bought that knowing that was the situation. He didn't go to City Hall and check it. I mean, I have people that have done that. They go and check to make sure that they can get that subdivided. They don't buy it and then go. They get asked. I don't know. That's just the way I feel. I'm not gonna vote.
Yeah, I don't frankly see where we would have the legal basis to tear one of the properties down.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm just
We
saying
could reject the application,
reject it.
right? But I can't see where we'd have that
And
authorization.
if you reject the application, you're stuck in a situation where you've got two well
Non-
that are non-conforming.
Right, and yeah, we're trying to rationalize
Right.
the map, so to speak.
Exactly.
I would direct a question to the planning department. I think probably specifically to Dominic. In your email of the September 18th, you had an extensive discussion with Ms. Diaz. And I did, by the way, find your arguments very compelling. But let's look at this specific proposal as a real proposal. Tearing down the garage. It's a 2-car garage, if I remember right from driving by it. Do you pick up an extra or 2 more parking spaces by doing that? I don't see how it would happen. But, you spent more time out on the site than I obviously have.
I think when dealing with these nonconformances, once you start to redesign that parcel, I don't think engineering wise you could get an additional conforming parking space, right? Because a conforming parking space, you'd want it to be 9 by 18 feet. And if it's third spot, I don't think you can stack them in such a way. So I don't see how tearing down the two existing parking spaces would have added to the off-street parking on that particular parcel.
Yeah, thank you. That's what I was wondering.
Ordinarily, the answer would be no, once we've concluded the public comment. But since you're the only person here concerned about this, I'm going to make an exception. Well, go ahead. Okay, I mean, I feel like I'm missing something. That's why they're here. If we reject the request for the variances, the only way the owner of these 2 buildings can bring them into conformance is by radically transforming the actual footprint of these buildings. That's not what this board should be in the business of doing. So well, yeah, but that does nothing to help you. You're in no worse position after this is approved versus being in the position you're in right now. Take your word on that one. I don't say. I understand that, but from where I'm sitting, you've got these 2 parcels, these 2 buildings that are available. And, to me, this is correcting something that pre-exists the zoning requirement. And the reason why they're building is because these buildings predate the actual code. So it's an historical anomaly, but to me, this seems like the cleanest way to allow But I'm only one vote on this, board. So, are there any other questions or comments from board members? This application? If not, we'll go linearly through the motions. Mr. D'Amico, you said you had nothing further? Okay. So in the interest of proceeding as expeditiously with our agenda as we can, the first motion I'll entertain is with regard to the planning department's request that certain documents be entered into the record, staff's recommendation with attachments dated December 3rd of 2024, Mr. Skadberg's memorandum dated December 26th, the memorandum from Mr. Pimentel dated October 21st, the email from the Water Department Superintendent Jim Marvel dated September 19th, and the email from the Fire Marshal Captain Carr dated September 4th, 2024. And then lastly, the memorandum that was provided tonight by the abutting neighbor. I'm going to mispronounce the name, the author of this memorandum. It's Hisham Saikali. This has been passed around and made available to board members for review. I ask that be included in the record as well.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman.
So,
I want to add Ms. Diaz's comments also that were in the staff report. And were dated
I'll make that amendment
October 31st.
Yep.
and I'll move to accept.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Crook, seconded by Mr. Miller to accept all of those identified documents into the record. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. The second motion I'll entertain is with regard to whether or not we grant the requested dimensional variances. We will treat that as a separate vote from the request for a special use permit. And
And,
as with all these variance requests, a motion pro or con to be couched as specifically as we can into the required for the dimensional relief.
Which part do we want on the record? Just item one?
All of them. If you're going to, either way, if you move affirmatively or negatively with regard to the request for relief, the rationale needs to be.
I'm asking if you want me to read it onto the record.
I think you can just incorporate it into your motion. What do you find? You know, do you?
All right, I move we accept the motion to approve the requested dimensional variances as itemized on page 9 of 11. With the rationales that the hardship in which the applicant seeks relief is due to the unique characteristics of the subject land or structure and not to the general characteristics of the surrounding area, and not due to a physical or economic disability of the applicant, accepting those physical disabilities addressed in RI GL 45-24-30, 16, section 16. And two, such hardship is not the result of any prior action of the applicant. And item 3, the granting of the requested variance will not alter the general character of the surrounding area or impair the intent or purpose of this chapter or the city comprehensive plan upon which this chapter is based. And 4, in granting a dimensional variance, that hardship will not be suffered by the owner of the subject property if the dimensional variance is not granted, shall be amount to more than a mere inconvenience, meaning that relief sought is minimal to a reasonable enjoyment of the permitted use to which the property is proposed to be devoted. The fact that a use may be more profitable or that a structure may be more valuable after the relief is granted shall not be grounds for relief.
Just want to add too that this would also have the 3 standard dimensional relief conditions that are on page.
Page 11.
Correct, and I'll make that note for the record. Mr. Crook, I assume your motion would also require that the petitioner obtain all necessary permits necessary to exercise the relief granted. If he fails to obtain those requisite permits within 6 months, expiration, the approval will expire. The approval will be subject to strict compliance to the submitted site plan. And all conditions of approval of the preliminary plan application will also apply as conditions of granting the requested dimensional.
Yep, so stated and so moved.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Crook, seconded by Mr. Miller to grant the requested dimensional relief. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Noting Ms. Rockwell's opposition. The next motion I'll entertain is with regard to the request for issuance of a special use permit to allow use of the existing three-family dwelling in an R6 zoning district. A motion in that regard?
Just wanted to say, I think this is for the permit portion, correct?
Correct.
So do we also have to include the fact that the address does not include 19, what's the address? 19 Weldon?
Yeah, I think we can make that a condition of approval that the application be amended to no longer reference 19 Weldon.
Right. I would,
Is that a motion to approve the special use permit?
so,
Second.
Motion by Mr. Miller, seconded by Ms. Lopes, subject to obviously the condition that we just, that the application will be treated as amended. We drop the reference to 19 Weldon. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ms. Rockwell opposed. And then lastly, is there a motion to grant conditional preliminary subdivision approval subject to the conditions requested by the planning department identified on page 11 of the memorandum?
so moved.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Miller, seconded by Ms. Lopes. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Ms. Rockwell opposed. Thank you very much. Good luck with the project.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming in, ma'am. I appreciate your participation.
Have a nice evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is item D. It's a request for a recommendation to the Waterfront Special Development District Commission regarding comprehensive plan consistency for Metacomet Property LLC's application for a proposed mixed-use development located on 500 Veterans Memorial Parkway. Assessors map 107, block 15, lot 1, and map 107, block 15, lot 1 through 10. And I will just note for the record that this afternoon, prior to today's hearing, we received by email a memorandum to the Waterfront Commission hearing panel and the planning board from the Design Review Committee dated December 9th, 2024. We also received a memorandum, I guess I'll describe it as, regarding the historic significance of the Veterans Memorial Parkway, submitted by Keep Metacomet Green, dated December of 2024. Both of those have been received, and members of the planning board have had an opportunity to review, hopefully, those as well. Counsel to the applicant.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Josh Berlinski. I'm an attorney with the firm of Darrow Everett. Represent the applicant, Metacomet Property LLC. Briefly, as members of this board may recall, we were here in April to initiate this process. That meeting, the board, properly in retrospect, asked that we do a little bit more work as it relates to the refinement of the engineering, architectural, and traffic product. We are entering our 10th month of permitting this project before design review and the Waterfront Commission. We're very pleased with the progress thus far. We think it's been a productive process for both the public, the commissions, and the applicant alike. And we thought, in response to a request that was actually made at the April meeting, which I'm sure everybody remembers like it was yesterday, we have a brief presentation of the project because we hadn't really made one to the planning board before. So I have 4 consultants that are going to speak in as brief as their remarks would otherwise allow, just to explain the status of the project, point out some elements of it, and then we're available to answer any questions you might have. I have John Sally, who's our architect from Phase Zero Design, Matt Merva, who's from our engineering firm, Bowler Engineering, Paul Bannon, who's our traffic consultant from Crossman Engineering, and then we have our planning consultant, Ashley Sweet from Weston and Sampson, to conclude tonight's presentation. So I might say Matt or John first. Matt, Matt Merva from Bowler will begin the presentation.
Where are each of these witnesses? Mr. Villar?
Good evening. Please raise your right hand. You swear that the testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do.
Please state your name for the record.
Matt Merva with Bowler. Thank you. Working on a couple slides here. Perfect. Thank you. If you wouldn't mind just advancing them when I ask, that's great. Thanks a lot. So I'm just going to handle number 1 here, the site design review summary, just to sort of recap where we've been over the past 10 plus months since we've started the process here. If you could click ahead to the next slide. Oh, back one. This just breaks down the site into the phases that we intend to build out on. Phase 1 is the golf course that's actually already operational as of this past summer. So that is a functioning 9-hole golf course open to the public. Phase 1A is the maintenance facility that needs to be relocated from up in the yellow area to allow for the development of Phase 2 and then Phase 3 subsequently. So if you click to the next slide, this shows the overall development plan as it sits today. Josh mentioned the process we've been through so far. We submitted detailed drawings. This is just sort of a summary illustrative plan, but really we've got, updated grading, drainage, utilities, landscape, lighting, layout and materials that have all been put together to describe in further detail what you see up on the screen here. But there have been some design modifications throughout the process that have been brought about by comments from the boards we've been in front of, from the DPW, from the peer reviewers. So I'm just going to run through some of the modifications quickly. If you click to the next slide, we start to highlight where some of these changes have happened through the process. So generally speaking, as I mentioned, we've provided greater detail on the types of lighting, specialty pavement materials. We provided detailed plant lists, locations for EV stations for electric vehicles, locations for bike rack, and potential for future solar development on the site on some of the rooftops. Click into the next one if you would. I think back to 1, maybe 2. Okay, one more ahead. There you go. That's it. So one of the key features of the site plan is really this town center concept that's evolved since we first started presenting the project. This would consist of specialty retail in a pedestrian-oriented environment, open to the public, terminating on green space at an outdoor seating area, and then cafe tables, benches, seating, areas for food trucks. So that's in the area you see in red there, and one of the architect's renderings is in the view in the lower right corner there. So we think that's really going to be kind of the heart of the development. If you click to the next slide, We also looked at some pathway improvements. We're accommodating bike travel along this 100-foot sort of park-like frontage that we'll have along Veterans Memorial Parkway. So we've widened out the paths to allow for multi-use travel there and cleaned up some of the pedestrian connections in that zone. Next slide. We also worked hard to create a buffer to the back of the grocery use on site. So there's some grade change that we're taking advantage of, but we're also going to build up a berm and an additional fencing and landscape that will hide the loading area from view on Lion Ave there. Next slide, please. We also had some great discussions with the Design Review Committee about creating kind of a more curvilinear entrance to that grocery anchored retail area. So that's the slide you see here, that the alignment has changed, and we've provided some rendering for what that looks like as well. Next slide. We've also provided additional green buffer along our boulevard to enhance that pedestrian experience. Next slide, please. We've broken up the massing of some of the low-scale garages that border the residential area on the property. And John Selly will get into more detail on that in his architectural discussion. Next slide, if you would. We've provided some enhanced treatment for what we're really describing as the residential entry to the property. So once you come down the boulevard, either from Veterans Memorial or from Lion Ave, you get to a place where you're really entering the residential zones. We're providing for some signage and especially paving there to make that distinction very clear. Next slide, please. We also reconfigured some of the buildings in this location to provide additional streetscape along the entry drive and respond to some stormwater questions that we've gotten during peer review that have all been incorporated into the overall updated package. Next slide. Provided some updates to the pocket park that will be along the entrance to Pierce Park and Jones Pond to greater delineate the pedestrian access there and connections down into this property. Next slide. And then provided some additional understory planting along Fort Street to help buffer that proposed maintenance building from some employee parking spaces that we're providing there. So if we click to the next slide, we actually zoom in on that area and have provided some additional landscape and berming in that zone. Next slide, if you would. And then, as I mentioned, the golf course was approved and developed and opened this past summer. So that really sort of kicked off the development here, and we're excited about inviting the public onto the property for the first rounds this summer. Next slide. Just to run through quickly, we have been through an extensive peer review process with PAR Engineering, who reviewed all of our detailed design drawings, our stormwater calculations. They provided a letter back to us. We've worked back and forth with them through a pretty collaborative process, and we're at a point now where they've responded to our comment responses. So we've had responses to the responses. There are a few, maybe 2 or 3 small items to button up, which we don't have any issue with doing, and we'll be updating plans accordingly and can make that a condition of any kind of approval moving forward here. But there was no showstoppers in there, and everything was acceptable on our end there. So I've just got updated plans in the next couple of slides, but I'm not going to run through them all. They're just, you can just click right through here. We're showing the updated layout, grading, drainage, and utility plans, which have all responded to those peer review questions and comments. And there are detailed sheets that break the site into smaller portions where we're zoomed in, and you can see a lot more detail than you can obviously see on the screen here. With that, I'll conclude and turn it over to John Selly, who's going to just run through the architecture. Thank you.
Raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
State your name, please.
My name is John Selly. I'm with Phase Zero Design. We're the architects for the project. So I just want to start my remarks with a little bit of background. I know we've, as Josh mentioned, we've been talking through the permitting for 10 months or so now. So for us, we're sort of deep in the details of it. And I want to give you a little bit of the flavor of the conversations that we have had to date with the Design Review Committee and Waterfront Commission. But to back up a little bit from an architectural perspective, I would say that the sort of overarching planning concepts that we used to help guide the design for the project have remained consistent from the outset. And I think some of those big planning concepts, just to give you all a sense of those, one of them was to make sure that we were appropriately zoning the site in terms of what uses go where relative to the surrounding communities for the development. So you'll have seen in the site plans that Matt ran through, all of the commercial and retail components of the development have been located on the northwest portion of the property near neighbors that are more commercial in nature. All of the residential components to the development have been located more to the west in relationship to the residential neighbors around the property. Another overarching planning concept was that we wanted to maintain the character of Veterans Memorial Parkway. That was a key consideration in all of our planning and siting of buildings on the development. So we maintained the 100-foot buffer along Veterans Memorial Parkway that was suggested in the design guidelines from the Waterfront Commission. And in addition to that, we cited small-scale retail buildings on the parkway side of the development in such a way that they screened the parking from the parkway itself. If you could actually advance one slide, we could see a graphic. So Matt had mentioned the town center, which this is an aerial view of that town center. And that was this sort of third overarching planning concept that we used really to develop this town center as the heart of the development, not only as a great amenity for folks who might live on the site, but also a great community gathering space for folks who live in the neighborhoods around the development. But in this image, you can see Veterans Memorial Parkway along the left side of the screen there. As I mentioned, small scale retail, sort of almost residential in scale on that side of the property. We zoned the site again with all of the larger buildings more toward the center of the site and these small buildings around the periphery. Again, trying to place the most appropriate uses in the right location on the property. And I think these overarching themes, and I'm giving you this background, I think they were all well received by the Design Review Committee of the Waterfront Commission. And most of the conversations that we had with them then were more focused on details. And I think, from the points that Matt walked through on the site design, a lot of it was more detail oriented. I think the same was true in terms of the comments that we received and adapted to on the architectural side. Next slide, please. So to give a little flavor of what some of those architectural comments were from the Design Review Committee, one was that on some of the larger multifamily buildings, some of the roof lines were a little bit static. So we did some work in response to some of those comments to develop a little bit more variety in terms of the roof lines on the larger multifamily buildings. So this rendering was an example of the enhanced design of one of those buildings. Next slide, please. Another series of discussions we had with the Design Review Committee had to do with the fact that a lot of the buildings in the town center area in particular will be viewed from all different directions, all sides. So we needed to really come up with a 360 design to these buildings. There's no real backside to many of them. So dealing with things like how to screen rooftop mechanical equipment, where to properly locate meters and things like that was a consideration. So in this particular slide on the building, which is right in that town center area, which will house the golf operations, we made an adjustment to the roof line to allow a roof well to conceal the rooftop equipment on this particular building, as well as others. Next slide, please. This is an overhead view of one of the multifamily buildings. Similarly, we were looking at ways of screening rooftop equipment on all of these buildings. And as Matt mentioned, we, through the design review process, did look at additional options for how to locate solar on the rooftops of some of these buildings. Next slide, please. And one other point that Matt had mentioned was some comments we received on the parking garage element, which you see in the foreground to the left here. This is the central boulevard that runs through this site. The grocery store would be over to your right here in terms of this area. Got some great comments from the design review committee about how to really simplify the parking garage buildings, but make them a better product in the end. Next slide, please. So again, this aerial view of the town center. So I think, you know, the process that we've been through to date has been great. There's been a lot of productive conversation. Again, very detail oriented, detail focused. We've been happy to make some modifications where appropriate through those discussions, and we think it's made a better product from the architectural perspective. So again, thank you all for your time this evening. Happy to answer any questions if you have any about the buildings this evening. At this point, I will turn it over to Paul Bannon to give a summary of the offsite improvement.
You swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Yes, I do. For the record, I'm Paul Bannon, transportation engineer with Crossman Engineering. Crossman was retained to review the traffic element of the project on a planning level basis, and also as part of the state permitting process for the offsite improvements. I'm very familiar with the Parkway, having worked on development projects over the last 2 decades. So I'm very familiar with the area and the roadway characteristics and operations. In addition to that background, we also reviewed the City of East Providence comprehensive plans, the transportation element, the Waterfront Commission Special Development District Plan, the Metacomet District Design Guidelines, and the Veterans Memorial Parkway Stewardship Plan to obtain an understanding of these documents and their recommendations for the Parkway. As a result of this review, to meet the goals of the city, the Waterfront Commission, and other state level review agencies, we developed an alternative that included a roundabout design at Lion Ave. We're not introducing a new access on the Parkway. We're not introducing a new controlled access to a private development project. The consideration of the roundabout extends back 15 years when the Village on the Waterfront was being considered. That would have provided an extension of Waterfront Drive from Tockwatton down to Lion Ave as a southerly terminus. That would provide a waterfront roadway linkage between Lion Ave and the Henderson Bridge. This concept was further advanced in the comprehensive plan update, where the comp plan called for a context-sensitive roundabout for traffic calming, safe pedestrian access, and efficient vehicular circulation to the waterfront at this location. The Village of the Waterfront project was not constructed, and also the resulting roundabout wasn't. If we fast forward to today, what we would be doing as part of our recommendation, we'd be just relocating existing access that's on the Parkway to the property and building 2 driveways on Lion Ave. The project as proposed give the city and state an opportunity to enhance this section of the Parkway, which is unlike either section to both the north and south. That are the contributing factors for the scenic highway. Along the property frontage within the project area of the offsite improvements, the Parkway is a straight, level, high-speed roadway, unlike those areas to the north and south that include the Fort Hill section, Overlook, and the Squantum Woods. Next slide, please. As you see in this photo, this is the area of Squantum Woods. What you think about when you talk about the Parkway, scenic character. The project area that we're looking at for upgrade is devoid of these features. Next slide, please. This is our frontage looking south to Lion Ave. This is the view in the condition of the parkway as it relates to the area that we want to enhance. Our intent and goal is to construct the infrastructure improvements that were proposed 15 years ago. This would also give us the opportunity to enhance the parkway and provide the features that exist today to both the north and south, as you had just seen. And most importantly, we would be constructing a cohesive, context-sensitive parkway design consistent with the historic nature of the parkway and linked to the scenic highway areas that we just showed you to the south and to the north. We've retained, as part of our design team, a landscape architect that is very familiar with the parkway. He worked on the stewardship plan, the Scenic Roadways Board, and will assist in the design of the elements for those improvements. The design of the intersection improvements on the parkway 15 years ago proposed two-lane roundabout design based on the volumes that were occurring during that period. Volumes today consistent with that number, so we've advanced that, again, two-lane roundabout design. Next slide, please. And I know this is hard to read, but I'll just briefly go through it. Starting at the northern end of the plan, north of the office park, we're proposing to install a left turn lane into the office park to make that a safer condition than what presently exists, where they have to turn from the high-speed travel lane. Heading south to the roundabout, we widen to have a two-lane approach. There'll be two lanes coming around the roundabout and two lanes down to our driveway, where we'll then be reduced to a single lane, similar to existing conditions. The driveway proposed at our site, that will be stop controlled, right turn only. Those vehicles looking to go south will have to access Lion Ave and take a left at the roundabout, which is safe condition. So these improvements do not introduce a signal control or roundabout control at a private development. It's proposed at a location that had previously been considered and approved as part of another project 15 years ago. We're also providing and coordinating, excuse me, an additional approach to the Village on the Waterfront property, which has new owners, and we're working with them to on that design and their needs for the future. As part of our effort, we met with and coordinated with the Department of Transportation. They reviewed our report, our plans, and we received a preliminary letter agreeing concept with our design to allow us to go to final design and permit. We've also had that reviewed with the city's peer review consultant, and they have reviewed and again have approved our plan in our report. So we're ready to move forward with the final design, excuse me, the final design effort, and that includes a formal physical alteration permit with review by the Scenic Roadways Board also. Then I'll go to the next.
Good evening, everyone.
Please raise your right hand. You swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do.
Thank you. And state your name.
Ashley Sweet. I am a project manager with Weston and Sampson and put together a report for this project concerning consistency with zoning, the comprehensive plan, and the waterfront guidelines. Just give the presentation just a moment. Thank you. Next slide. So very briefly, going to go over the project. I will try to do that really quickly and not touch too much upon what everyone else has covered. And then again, briefly go over zoning ordinance consistency, comprehensive plan consistency, the relief that's requested, a little bit about neighborhood context, and then findings and conclusions, which is all covered in the written report that was submitted. Next slide. So again, we're talking here about about 140 acres total. Planned as a mixed-use development on the former Metacomet Golf Course, which does include 6.9 acres of open space that will be dedicated to the city and a 9-hole golf course that is currently active on the site. There will be a total of 890 residential units. These will include 845 multifamily rentals, 22 duplexes, and 24 townhouses in the residential portion of the site. 10% of the units, which is about 89 units, will be designated as affordable. The total development for the commercial portion of the site is approximately 153,000 square feet of commercial space, including that town center that you've heard about with a grocery store and neighborhood scale retail. Next slide. A couple of highlights that we wanted to bring to your attention in terms of recreation and open space. This provides about 9.6 acres of open space that will be donated to the city. A renovated 43-acre 9-hole golf course, which is presently in operation. And the entire project will have a combination of a pedestrian promenade with outdoor amphitheater, connections to the East Bay Bike Path, and an internal shared pathway. This will be a phased development. Phase 1 is the golf course, which has occurred already. Phase 2 will be the golf course maintenance facilities. Phase 3 will be a portion of the commercial and the residential units. And then phase 4 will be completion of those residential units. Certainly, environmental and traffic considerations are of high importance. The site is being designed with a 100-foot landscape buffer along Veterans Memorial Parkway with the roundabouts that you just heard at Veterans Memorial Parkway and Lyon Avenue to manage the traffic flow. And there will be over 700 trees planted on the site to enhance the landscape and the aesthetics of the development. The economic impact is something that we feel is important and wanted to mention, and that it will generate approximately $5.3 million annually in taxes. It will produce about 3,600 construction jobs and about 630 permanent jobs in its first year of operation. Next slide. So to speak a little bit about zoning ordinance consistency, the project does require 3 variances. One is a monument sign variance. This is to install a monument sign at the entrance. That's currently a prohibited type of sign, but the applicant intends to work with the city to make sure that it is in keeping with the character. There is a monument style sign in the development just to the north. And the applicant, as I said, intends to keep that visual character. We want to preserve the visual buffer, really avoiding the need to move buildings closer to the street. The requirement is that you have that signage on the buildings themselves, but in order to do that, we'd have to pull those buildings very close to Veterans Memorial Parkway in order for anyone to see any of the signage. We feel that the design is better served and the public and the city is better served if we're allowed to keep those buildings away from the parkway, keep the natural character of the parkway, keep the green spaces along the parkway, and use a monument sign to indicate the businesses that are actually inside the development, instead of bringing the development to the parkway to be able to put those signs on the building as is currently required in your regulations. We're also asking for a parking variance. The requirement is 1.5 spaces per residential unit. The requirement is 2 spaces. We're asking for 1.5 parking spaces per residential unit. More than half of the units are studio and 1 bedroom, likely to be occupied by single individuals. We are asking for that parking variance for that reason, and it gives us the ability to keep more green space on the site. The total parking shortfall is minimal. It's only about 12 spaces with that variance. The other variance that we're asking for is a fenestration percentage variance. The current regulations require that there's 25% fenestration on certain side and rear elevations of the buildings. And on side and rear walls, we're needing that space for programmatic elements like kitchen storage and utilities, which does not allow for fenestration of those sides. All primary frontage, public facing sides of the building will meet or exceed the fenestration requirements, maintaining that aesthetic feel. It is just these side and back of the buildings that we need to be able to have those blank spaces for programmatic issues. Next slide. I also wanted to speak to you about the comprehensive plan consistency. Starting on page 10 of that report is a detailed analysis of your comprehensive plan, its current goals, policies, and actions, and how this project aligns with those specific goals, policies, and actions. In this presentation, I'm giving you a general overview, but I encourage you to take a look at that. There's also a table in there that gives specific references to specific goals, policies, and actions in the plan and how this project is consistent with them. Overall, the plan speaks in general terms about ensuring a quality of development. It talks about providing for a range of housing and service businesses that incorporate open space and recreation into developments, so that everything is available to the residents of those developments. And we feel that this project really meets those goals, having an open space component, a recreation component, a housing and a commercial component all contained within one project. Again, also promoting a mix of uses, which is spoken often to in the comprehensive plan. The plan also speaks about maintaining, enhancing open space and recreation opportunities. This project is providing nearly 10 acres of donated land to the city for public open space and also renovates a 9-hole golf course and makes that golf course accessible and open to the public. The plan also speaks about scenic quality, and as we just discussed, we're looking to set these buildings back from the roadway, make sure that the smaller buildings are oriented closest to the parkway and adjacent residential uses, with the highest intensity uses in the center of the site, so that from the outside four corners, you see the least impact, and it preserves the scenic quality of the parkway and the general area. Next slide. On the land use chapter, the text in the document speaks to a positive economic impact and diversification of your tax base. As mentioned, this project will generate $5.3 million in taxes annually and will create significant job opportunities. The plan speaks about infill and redevelopment. This takes currently underutilized land, revitalizes it, provides a component of open space, retail, and much needed housing within the community. The plan speaks about promoting flexible zoning. This utilizes the waterfront development district zoning to implement a diverse mix of uses on a single site. The plan also speaks numerous times to providing mixed use and encouraging mixed use development. This project provides a self-sustaining community with a mix of residential, commercial, recreation, and overall enhances the economic benefit to the community and provides a community center and a small downtown space for area residents. Next slide. The economic development chapter, again, also, of course, speaks to diversifying the tax base. This project is intended to generate significant tax revenue, creation of job opportunities, as previously mentioned. It will create approximately 3,640 construction jobs during construction and 630 permanent jobs in its first year of operation. The plan speaks about promoting new development that respects neighborhoods. This is a mixed use combining those commercial, residential, and recreational features. Again, it has been designed in such a way that the more intense uses are central to the site and the less intense uses are on the edges of the site that are adjacent to existing residential neighborhoods as well as the parkway itself. The plan also speaks about facilitating development and redevelopment of underutilized property. This is an underutilized property. It retains a portion of the site as a golf course, makes that golf course open to the public, which it previously was not, and really maximizes the benefit of the land through the redevelopment of mixed uses. Next slide. The Recreation, Conservation, and Open Space chapter talks about increasing recreational opportunities. This project took a previously private golf course, turned it into a renovated 9-hole public course, and will donate 10 acres of land for open space for the community. It'll protect and preserve, as I said, that golf course, previously private, now public. It will make connections to existing bicycle and pedestrian amenities through the connections to the East Bay Bike Path, as well as create a system of internal shared paths within the property that will connect to other areas in the neighborhood. And it really enhances and expands open space opportunities by maintaining scenic views, maintaining natural areas adjacent to the project site. Really, again, as I said, putting the more intense uses towards the center and protecting the outer edges so that they blend with the existing neighborhood. Next slide. A little bit about that neighborhood context. To the northeast, we have medium density residential homes. The current view will be preserved with this open space designation along Fort Street, maintaining that neighborhood character. To the southwest, that's the adjacent to the Veterans Memorial Parkway and the Cove. Again, the project as designed will preserve those existing conditions. There's no new development near the Cove, and the entrance at the Parkway is designed to manage traffic flow. To the east of the site, there is residential homes and small non-residential uses, which will experience a minimal change. The renovated 9-hole golf course will be retained where it is and really keeps those current views for those neighbors that are adjacent to that. And to the west, there is an office park with 15 single-story buildings, which is compatible to the projects that's being proposed on the adjacent site. It adds commercial amenities that benefit those adjacent office uses and is separated by Lyon Avenue, improving convenience without the disruption to those areas. Next slide. Overall, in a review of your comprehensive plan, we find that the project is appropriate and compatible scale of development to the surrounding area, that the traffic and infrastructure improvements are appropriate and in keeping with your comprehensive plan. The project achieves several of your open space goals. It enhances recreation opportunities that are identified in the plan. It does provide for a mix of uses, which is supported and called for in your comprehensive plan. It capitalizes on a redevelopment opportunity, which is something that is also, again, called for in the comprehensive plan. It provides for a positive tax base. It establishes over 600 permanent jobs at a variety of pay scales, and it provides needed market rate and affordable housing for the community and the surrounding area. Next slide. So overall conclusions is that we find that the project is consistent with the zoning ordinance, subject to having those 3 variances that we reviewed approved. It is consistent with the goals, policies, and actions found in your 2010 to 2015 comprehensive plan, which are outlined starting on page 10 of that report. And it is also consistent with the Waterfront Special Development District. We submitted a very similar report to that committee that outlined the consistency with their planned documents as well. And that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, that concludes our presentation this evening. I didn't mention this at the outset, but as I think you referenced at the beginning, we were fortunate enough to receive the DRC recommendation at their meeting last month. There were, I believe, 10 conditions attached to that recommendation, which are a part of the record, which I believe you have in your possession. We've submitted and worked through a number of peer review studies during the course of the Waterfront Commission Design Review Committee approval process as well. And we've worked in close collaboration with the Planning Department, Department of Public Works, Water Department, and Engineering Department for the City of East Providence as the project and the design has progressed in order to make sure that each of these departments are on board and aware of the development, the repercussions, and the interaction and the integrity of the, merging with municipal systems to the extent necessary. So we're happy. We've got everyone here. We're happy to answer any other questions or comments you might have. But thank you very much for the time.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Belinsky. Keith?
So just as a refresher here, the planning board's role in the development review process is to offer an advisory recommendation to the design review committee and the Waterfront Commission as to whether the development's consistent with the purposes and intent of the city's 2010 comprehensive plan, as well as the subdivision and land development review regulations. So at the April meeting, obviously the board voted to table this, bring additional outstanding materials to the board without prejudice. So as was discussed, some of the things that they focused on was the traffic study, archaeological survey, fiscal impact study, utility capacity issues, and other outstanding issues related to the state agencies like DOT. And the applicants have gone over some of the progress that they've made in that time. So based upon the additional feedback, professional review responses from peer review professionals and city staff, planning continues to support a prior conclusion that the development's generally consistent with the goals and objectives described in detail within the department's April 5th, 2024 consistency review memorandum, and views the additional data and feedback as an important confirmation that the project is consistent with the comprehensive plan's goals and objectives. And we concur with Ms. Sweet's summary of the consistency with the comprehensive plan. We find it to be consistent with the 9 purposes of the subdivision and land development review regulations. That's task of the board here. We also point out in our memo just some of the legislative actions that have been already taken to resolve potential comprehensive plan inconsistency issues, like the city council's rezone of the property, their amendment of the comprehensive plan to accommodate the property in the future land use plan, the rezoning that occurred to rezone this from open space to be in the Metacomet sub-district of the waterfront district. So yeah, our recommendation here is that the planning board offer an advisory opinion to the Waterfront Commission that the development as proposed is consistent with the purposes and intent of the city's 2010-2015 comprehensive plan, and further that the development is consistent with section 1-2 general purposes of the subdivision and land development review regulation.
Thank you, Keith. Questions, comments?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. Mr. Planning Director, Mr. Pines, on page 3, consistent with the 2010, 2015 comprehensive plan. With a little bit of luck, this plan will have, or this project will have started under one comprehensive plan and finished under another one. What is the legal formation with regard to that?
Well, we did verify with the city solicitor that in the Waterfront Commission's council, that, they've applied under the current comprehensive plan so that adopting a new comprehensive plan won't, affect this application. What we should be going by is the 2000.
But the application going forward would, obviously, once the new plan is in place, follow that plan rather than the prior plan.
Well, I mean,
in other words, you're not grandfathering the plan under an old plan, the project under an old plan.
well, the Waterfront Commission would really grant one approval, which would be under the 2010 plan.
So it would be, so as written, so no element of the new plan would pertain to the plans and the development of this project.
No, I don't think it would. I mean, you mentioned, I guess, to an extent, it would be grandfathered into the old plan. I assume that if they come back in another, if they're approved and they come back in another year or two with some new, no new change to the plan that was their plan that was unforeseen, it would be going by the new comprehensive
And
plan.
it would go under the new plan. I see. Okay. On page 4, we've gone over some of these issues before, and I'm wondering whether we've really nailed it yet. You indicate, and this is for the first item on the page, and we're talking about the use of integrated pest management. In supporting this use, planning strongly recommends that the developer utilize low-impact pest management practices in maintaining the golf course. Can't we stipulate that requirement? I mean, we're just recommending it. If it's something that's environmentally sensitive and we're concerned about it, shouldn't we make that an outright requirement instead of a recommendation?
Well, I mean, the planning board's whole motion would be a recommendation. So, if someone's going to require it, it would be the Waterfront Commission. I suppose you could recommend that. If you vote to recommend approval here.
Well, I mean, and isn't it also a matter of compliance with the master plan? Because that's what we're really dealing with here. Does this application to date, at this moment, comply with the 2010, 2015 master plan? So if we're saying that in that regard, stronger language would be required, that would be our prerogative.
Yeah, you could improve. You could include that in your recommendation.
All
Of
right.
course, the golf course is already up and running, but
Let's go into the next item. Let me see. I noticed something actually as I was just driving over the site today, and it was a dead low tide. And I wonder because, I was not, born in East Providence like many of you had the good fortune to be. I've got to think that over the years, there's been a substantial amount of siltation off of the slopes into the pond or into the cove. I mean, do people recognize that? Is that right? Is it something, then that being the case, is it something we want to control? or we want to have controlled. Otherwise, we lose that resource, that ecological resource.
Right, and I think that's where the stormwater management efforts come into play here with the work they've done, the peer review that's gone into that, the DEM review that'll be necessary for the stormwater element of the development.
And so related to the DEM work, there was something else that struck me about it. I've looked at all of these reports with regard to hydrology. And I know that the golf course was in operation for over 100 years. And only, I think, in the last 10 to 12 years were it more environmentally sensitive management techniques put in place. So we're talking about a history of pesticides and insecticides. And I wondered, has anybody stopped and thought maybe we should be taking some core samples to find out if Wachemoket Pond is an environmentally sound environment? I mean, we were talking about the overall ecological values, right, and protection of wildlife. I haven't seen anybody look at that.
Yeah, I'm not sure if that's been done or if that's been part of the applicant's work with this.
Could you address that?
So we're subject to CRMC jurisdiction as it relates to the proximity to the water, including the cove. So as part of, we've sought a preliminary determination via CRMC as to the nature, the extent of their jurisdiction. And once that's confirmed, we have to supply certain information as to any engineering or improvements that take place within the CRMC buffer. So if CRMC, who has jurisdiction over that cove, deems it necessary to take samples or to do that, they'll insist upon that as part of their permit, their assent. I do note that the stormwater analysis, which Keith referenced previously, does discharge to some extent to the cove, and there is a treatment method that has both been promulgated by our engineers and signed off by PAR in the peer review. So the treatment is...
Yeah, I read that part.
Yeah, so the treatment has been dealt with, and if CRMC deems it necessary to any further testing or analysis from the cove, they'll include that condition as part of their assent.
But they haven't requested it up to date?
No, sir.
That's interesting. As long as we're talking over these issues, the discussion with regard to whether we have the traffic circle or we had a stoplight, I see in the planning department's report, you're taking the position that you want to avoid that if at all possible, even though there's 11,000 trips per day coming out of the site.
Yeah, I think some of the guidelines out there, and some of the references, speak more clearly about not having a traffic control signal on the parkway.
Okay, so now let me ask to understand this clearly. Is that the planning department's position? Is it the developer's position? Or is it both of your positions?
Can I take first crack at that?
Yes, please.
Sure. So your comprehensive plan and your district plan strongly discourage signalization along Veterans Memorial Parkway. So we've incorporated our design element to address that concern by incorporating a roundabout, which is also the preferred traffic mitigation method recommended by DOT as in connection with their review of our proposal.
And that's why I was wondering about it, because the master plan also talks about public safety.
Yep.
And if you could throw a picture up of the of your design, I think we should really take a close look at the area around the traffic circle.
Okay.
Can we put that up?
Yeah.
I won't try to
Maybe we can talk about it.
Okay, well, you know what it is.
Yeah, we know what it's
Where the
there,
traffic circle is,
Sure.
right? You guys have put in the location of the crosswalks for the bike path,
Correct.
right? And I believe all told, you have 4 lanes now.
Portions, yeah, 2 lanes, correct.
Right, and it's unsignaled.
Correct. Wait, hold on, about the 4 lanes, Paul, is that correct? You want to, yeah, I just don't want to misspeak, so it is
Right.
unsignaled, that I can confirm.
Each approach to the roundabout is 2 lanes and is separated
Right.
by a median divider, what we call a splitter island.
Right, so in other words, somebody who's walking their bike or, God forbid, trying to bike across that area is doing so at substantial personal risk.
No, it's a standard design.
It's a standard design, right? But if you had a traffic light at your other intersection, right, you'd obviously have a safer environment. And you also have the bike path as well. And I presume you'd like to see foot traffic off the bike path.
And that's how we've designed the site,
Right.
with connectivity to the bike path through the roundabout. It's a standard design. It'll be approved in.
That-
with
You said
the
it
Department
was a historic design.
Correct, but
Okay.
the design of a pedestrian crossing in a roundabout is a slow speed facility. It's a yield control and designed for speeds of 15 to 20 miles an hour. Full pedestrian visibility will have supplemental signage, potentially high visibility signage for pedestrians to press buttons for flashers when they're present.
Right. And as a traffic engineer, 11,000 trips a day, a good portion of those coming through the main thoroughfare. You're talking about foot traffic and you're talking about bicycle traffic.
Mhm.
And you're talking about slower speeds, yes, but you're not talking about any safety controls.
The safety controls would be at the pedestrian crossing with flashing beacons, maybe rapid rectangular flashing beacons that are pedestrian activated. So when someone's in the crosswalk crossing the road, there'll be
But nothing to slow or stop traffic.
slow traffic. Yes, they're going 15 to 20 miles an hour. They're not going 45 like they do today.
I see. I mean, I understand the point that there's a historic precedent with regard to the whole waterfront. And I'm thinking that we're really moving into a different dimension here. Right? We're talking about a significant development along the waterfront. And as much as the city and DOT wants to avoid putting in signal traffic, as a matter of public safety, I think we may be crossing a Rubicon here. Now, that being the case, that being the possibility, let's put it that way, that being the possibility, once the planning department and the waterfront commission has signed off on this phase of development and the final phase of development, if it later becomes evident, and it could be a tragedy, somebody gets run over, right? Or more than one person gets run over. And there's a huge public outcry for signalization. Does Marshall have any financial responsibility toward the cost of improving the traffic conditions?
Yes, we're responsible for the upgrade and the cost associated with it.
You are responsible for the upgrade,
Correct.
even though there's no upgrade planned at this point.
there's a major upgrade to the park.
Well, what I'm saying, if there was a subsequent upgrade that essentially meant putting in a traffic signal, would that be your responsibility?
We, Crossman Engineering, work with the state on a regular basis as part of we're consultants for the State Traffic Commission. So we review requests for crosswalks, for enhanced crosswalks, for signalization on a daily basis for the State Traffic Commission. So these issues come up statewide at the request of local communities. So if there's ever in the future a condition that would warrant consideration, it would be studied through that process and would have to go before the State Traffic Commission for any installations of a signal. I think the language in the comp plan, in the stewardship plan, allow for signalization under those types of circumstances for safety and of the motoring public and pedestrians. So if it's a matter of that issue, signalization can be considered. At this point, we don't feel that.
Well, that's good in and of itself, but what I'm asking is who pays?
It depends on when.
Perhaps I'm asking the wrong person.
Well, it depends on when. This could be 20 years down the road.
Right.
So at that point, it would be a request from the city to look into potential safety enhancements for pedestrians, and the state would look into that and include it in one of their projects.
Thank you. I'm good for now.
Any other questions from any other members of the board? If not, any members of the public wish to be heard? Come on up, Ms. Seal.
You swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do.
Please state your name and address for the record.
Andy Seal, 125 South Rose Street, East Providence. East Providence, 02914. Thank you for your time. I'll try to be brief. In June of 2020, this application came before the planning board. You were the first public agency in the city of East Providence to consider an application. Today, 4.5 years later, you are the last city of East Providence public agency to consider this application. Overall, the quality of life, which is a very important consideration in the comprehensive plan, has been diminished or will be diminished by this development. Going from a peaceful open space, even though it wasn't accessible, it was there. The only sounds were the sounds of wildlife. The only noise was the stars above. Now there will be 60 plus acres of development. Specifically talking about the Veterans Memorial Parkway, and I must say that I'm representing Keep Metacomet Green. Specifically related to Veterans Memorial Parkway, we feel that the roundabout and widening of the roadway is not consistent with the comprehensive plan. The 2010-15 comprehensive plan mentions the parkway. It says that waterfront district development projects will be executed with full regard to preserving this roadway's unique attributes. The East Providence Waterfront Special Development District Plan is incorporated into the comprehensive plan and thus becomes part of the comprehensive plan. It says on pages 34 and 35, a critical component of preserving and enhancing the scenic quality of the parkway is to retain its existing right-of-way width in its entirety
as undeveloped and green open space. There shall be no subdivision or development of the right-of-way, and the existing unpaved portion of the right-of-way of the parkway shall remain green and open space. Redevelopment along the parkway should be proportional to the existing roadway functioning and capacity. Curb cuts should be limited in size and location, and signage should be limited in size and scale. Development must be of the scale that would not trigger the warrants for traffic signalization. Roadway widening would also detract from the character and scenic properties of the parkway and should be discouraged. Increased truck traffic would adversely affect the neighborhoods adjoining the parkway. This exact language is embedded in the Waterfront District Design Guidelines specific to the Metacomet Subdistrict, the Kettle Point Subdistrict, and the Veterans Memorial Parkway Subdistrict. In addition to parkway alterations, the developer intends to erect a large monument sign at the main entrance from the parkway that is not limited in size and scale. I think it was mentioned that there is a monument sign to the north of the Metacomet property, but you'll see in the memorandum that we included in the record, you'll see the pictures of the signage on the parkway now. The Squantum Association, Kettle Point, and the medical facility at 450 Veterans Memorial Parkway. That is the only signage on the parkway. It's not monument signage. It's modest. It's included in the stonework. And this type of signage, a monument signage, violates the language and spirit of any number of protective measures regarding protection of the parkway's unique character. This would be the first and only standalone sign of the parkway to list retail tenants. Permitting the developer to erect a sign of this type would set a precedent for future developers to demand a similar variance. Owners of the current sites along the parkway, Kettle Point, University Orthopedics, the Squantum Association, and the medical facility at 450 Veterans Memorial Parkway would be justified in asking for the same consideration. On zoning consistency, I note that the East Providence City Council, in approving the amendment to the 2003 plan that incorporated the Metacomet site into the waterfront district, the members of the East Providence City Council purposefully included language to protect the parkway by limiting the scale of development to the traffic capacity of the parkway. There's been talk this evening and on other occasions about the Village on the Waterfront project, which included a roundabout, widening of the road, 2 lanes, 4 lanes. But we also note that that Village of the Waterfront project fell apart. To me, that's the end of the pertinence of the Village on the Waterfront. I've been here many times. As I said, you are the last defense of the comprehensive plan. You are the last defense of the quality of life of the community, the last defense against vast out-of-scale development of the Metacomet property. I thank you for your time. Have a good evening.
Any other members of the public wish to be heard? Yeah.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. Heather Andrade.
And your address, please, for the record.
Wampanoag Trail. I also represent Keep Metacomet Green, and I just want to make sure that you all remember that the parkway is considered as if it was on the National Register of Historic Places. And that should be brought up every single time that we're here. Why it's not is there was a fluke someplace, or somebody knew that all this stuff was going to happen and they put it aside, especially when KMG tried to reenact that bid to get it officially on the register. But keep in mind that it is thought of as on the register, and it should be treated as if it was. And I do have a question. If can this project be done without attacking the Veterans Memorial Parkway? I'm going to ask marshals. Can you do this project without doing anything to the parkway? Anybody? Josh?
I think my response to that is that the application is 10 months old. It's got a design plan incorporated to it that we stand behind, that has been approved conceptually by DOT and your peer review consultant. And that's the plan we're going with, is that the real briefly, and then I'll turn it back over to Heather, is that the special district plan from 2003 that was previously referenced called for the inclusion of a roundabout on Veterans Memorial Parkway. The property owner on the opposite Metacomet on the other side of the parkway at some point is going to come for an application at this point, and they can't access the property without a roundabout. I don't say this just to make it seem as though it's an inevitable, but as a practical reality, a roundabout was the preferred method as identified by this city upwards of 15 years ago, not by virtue of the veterans of the Village on the Waterfront project, but as contemplated in the special district plan of 2003. The capacity of the project in turn resulted in our configuration of the offsite improvements on Veterans Memorial Parkway. We stand by our planning consultants' report and testimony that infrastructure, that improvement is in fact consistent with the comprehensive plan. You saw the pictures that Mr. Bannon said about how the Squantum Woods element versus what we're talking about here with the wire fence, and we think that we're going to enhance the aesthetic of that intersection as well by virtue of the installation of the roundabout and the greenery and the landscaping that's required as a condition of that installation. So, excuse me. So what I would say is that the project, and as it's been progressed for upwards of a year now, incorporates that element. And so I don't want to speculate one way or the other. Like that's the application that we're here before you to discuss, and that's the one we stand behind. Thank you.
My point was directly related to the comprehensive plan, because it does say in the comprehensive plan that, as Candy said, that the traffic will be limited to, the development will be limited to the traffic on the parkway. We have rules. Just like the other instances before, we have rules. If you bought this property, you knew what was there, and now you want to take some state land, pay for it to fix your development, which doesn't meet the comprehensive plan. It really doesn't. It just for that instance. So I would like everybody to think about that. This is a historic roadway. If you read the Post this week, KMG had a letter in it detailing how the land was it was taken by eminent domain and bought. And there is not a property map available. After the parkway was done, land was bought and sold, little bits, all in lots, and there is not a property map outlining where all the things on all the land on the parkway and the areas, who owns what. There is not a map. Don't you think we should be finding out before we go and wreck a historic parkway? I think so. Please keep that in mind. And if anybody knows of one, and if I'm wrong, absolutely, I will admit it. But so far, we have not found one. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody else? Sure.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Your name and address for the record, please.
Daniel Bodwin, 48 Kettle Point Avenue, East Providence. Members of the committee, Mr. Chairman, thank you for this opportunity. I was here back in, I think it was March or April, your last meeting, and I just, at that point, mentioned that I'm a retired city planner, that I practiced for about 40 years. So I reviewed this. I'm also a member of Keep Metacomet Green. I know at the last meeting, I think the planning board correctly asked the developer to come back with a lot more studies, that you couldn't make a decision based on the material that you had. Well, I think the developer has done that in most cases, come back with an enormous amount of studies that have been reviewed by a lot of different people. And that's terrific. However, there's one area that I think needs further study in order for this planning board to make a decision, and that's the plans for the Veterans Memorial Parkway. I'll emphasize some of the points that Candy and Heather brought up. One is that it's clear in the comprehensive plan that projects are supposed to be constructed in line with the existing infrastructure, with the existing traffic capacity. That's in there. Now, this one cannot say that it can comply with that, but it leans back on the roundabout and says, well, that's always been in the plan. It hasn't always been in the plan for Metacomet. But that's one thing. But the other two, I think, call for this board to say, maybe we can approve the development itself, but we cannot approve what's happening on the Vets Parkway until we have a more detailed plan. There's several provisions in the comprehensive plan and the waterfront district plan that emphasize the importance of the historic nature, importance of view corridors, importance of the scenic nature. And yes, there's been a lot of words, a lot of discussion about how that's going to take place, but there has been no plans, no study as to what that might look like or how it may affect the historic nature of that parkway. The only comment that I've seen from a historic body has come from the East Providence Historic District Commission when they submitted something to the, submitted a letter to the city council. And in it, they said they have concerns about the proposed roadway widening and the rotary construction, stating that they are inconsistent with the measures that put in place for the road. That's the only historic comment that I know. I mean, all these other studies have been done. There's been no historic comment on this very historic feature that is eligible for the National Register. So you can't tell. You've got to have a lot of faith, a lot of people to say that that will be an enhancement to the historic nature without seeing a plan. The other thing about a plan, and Candy mentioned these, is that there are specific provisions that have to be met under the comprehensive plan, that it will retain the existing right-of-way in its entirety as undeveloped and green open space, that there'll be no subdivision or development of the right-of-way, and the unpaved portion of the right-of-way shall remain green and open space. And then the roadway widening would also detract from the character and scenic qualities and should be discouraged. Now, what we've seen is a lot of lines on a plan, but we don't really know what that's going to look like on the ground. How is that going to affect the right-of-way of the Veterans Parkway? So I would conclude by just stating, I would like to see the planning board say, okay, the whole plan, we get it. There's a whole bunch of studies. It's a good plan. But the Vets Parkway, we need more information in order to make that decision that is in compliance with the comprehensive plan. Thank you. I have a statement here for the record that I can give to someone. Who do I give that to?
Sure, we'll be happy to take it.
Here you go. Thank you.
Goodwin, I have a question for you.
Sure.
Considering your, your long years as a city planner yourself, I'm wondering if maybe you can clarify something in the report that Keep Metacomet Green just submitted. I actually just got it this morning. Actually, it wasn't even this morning, it was this afternoon. And in all fairness, I'm perhaps as severe with this report as I've been with some of the things that I see coming from the developer. Now, on page 7 of the report, I'll just read the section.
I'm sorry, this is the Keep Metacomet Green report?
Keep Metacomet Green report, but it's a
Okay, I
general
haven't
statement.
seen it, but go ahead.
It's a general statement. A 1991 initiative to nominate the parkway to the National Register of Historic Places was stalled when the state, despite wide public support, reportedly did not submit the application to the National Park Service. I've heard conjecture as to why the state didn't go forward with it. But the fact remains that the state didn't. So as we keep talking about the parkway as a historic place, that's not what happened.
Well, the fact is it's still eligible for the National Register. There has to be some resources put together in order to make the application. And I think for whatever reason, I don't know why, that has not been put together, but it's still eligible for the National Register. It's still referred to in the comprehensive plan, your comprehensive plan, that it's eligible for the National Register. So it doesn't really diminish the historic importance of it because it hasn't taken that step. I don't know why it hasn't taken that step other than resources.
Well, sir, my house is basically right where Old Crescent Park was. I think the Flying Fish was in my backyard. I'm not going to be able to go in, right? I could certainly put in an application to get my street on the National Historical Register, but that doesn't mean it's going to happen.
Well, there are certain bodies that, including this body, who says it's eligible for the National Register. The stewardship plan that was referred to here also says that. So there are different public agencies that have stated that it's eligible for the National Register. I think maybe one thing this body could recommend is let's make that happen because it's time. Let's get the resources together and make it happen. Because throughout your comprehensive plan, there's probably like 8 different sections that designate this as a historic resource that needs to be protected. There's a whole map of historic resources in your comprehensive plan about what are the important historic resources in this city, and the Vets Parkway is one of maybe, 10. It's considered, there's no question that it's considered a historic resource, plus all the background. I mean, it's all in there for the plan going back to like 1910. I mean, this is a tremendous effort that put this project together with the Olmsted brothers, and it's just, I don't know if you're questioning whether we should downgrade it and consider it not a historic resource. Is that your question?
Well, I think this was the point that I was making to the planning department. We're at a juncture now where all of these things are past history. And, the toothpaste is out of the tube. You don't get it, put the toothpaste back. Right?
This whole project was approved with the understanding that it was not going to dramatically change vets. If it did, if it's going to dramatically change the vets, then there's some issues with the way this whole thing has been talked about.
Well, I think the operative word is dramatic. Right? What might be dramatic to you might not be dramatic to him. Right? And might be not even dramatic enough to Candy. Right? I mean, that's not an objective, point of view, right? That's conjecture, it's opinion. So that's what we have to live with.
Okay.
But thank you. I just wanted to get a clarification on that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, ordinarily no, but I'll give you the, I did it for someone else earlier tonight. I'll do it again.
This doesn't go away. History does not go away. That roadway is historic. Metropolitan Park Commission. How can you just even sit there and say it's past? It's not. There could be many reasons why it was stopped. One of them could be somebody found out would much rather develop all of that land and got rid of it and put it aside. Or I am thinking that they needed a survey. They needed a survey of the land, and it wasn't done. When that excess land was sold, nobody did an exact map. So I think it was too much work, and that's what happened.
Mr. Valinsky, I will give you the last word just make sure that there's nobody else in the public that wants to be heard that hasn't had a chance. Anybody else going once, going twice?
Very, very last word. Veterans Memorial Parkway is subject to the jurisdiction, of DOT. I don't recall if any members of this planning board were there when Kettle Point first came before this commission for a recommendation in the comprehensive plan. I'm so sorry. As you may recall, there was some significant work done to Veterans Memorial Parkway in connection with the Kettle Point development. That required DOT approval. It required scenic roadway. I think that I was one of the attorneys on that application. It was considered a major improvement to vets. I'm not meaning to compare it to the proposal for this project, other than to say that there are state agencies that have jurisdiction over this. And if they don't believe that the roundabout is appropriate, or if they don't believe that it's not engineered correctly, and if Scenic Roadways doesn't believe that it complies with the requirements of the scenic roadway approval, and they in turn deny it, then we obviously have a problem, right? And our project isn't compatible, and then we have to come back to waterfront and come back to planning and redesign everything. So there is a state agency with several regulatory processes in place that are going to refine the design that require a full engineering package in terms of DOT, and it's going to require a submitted landscape design in terms of scenic roadway. And we intend to and look forward to the opportunity to hearing and presenting. Those are public hearings before the state and quasi agency at DOT and scenic roadway. And we willingly submit to their jurisdiction in order to come up with a design that is hopefully acceptable to those bodies and that obviously works with the development. It goes without saying, and I believe we have that approval and design review. If not, we'll stipulate it certainly when we seek final approval at Waterfront, that this approval is contingent upon the state approving the corresponding design elements that are subject to this jurisdiction. And if they don't, then we have an obligation to come back and either re-engineer or redesign or come back with another iteration of the project that does satisfy those mandates from the state. But what's necessary for us to get to that point is for the design review committee to make its recommendation, which we received fortunately, for this planning board to make its recommendation as to consistency with the comprehensive plan, which hopefully we're fortunate enough to receive, and then ultimately a waterfront commission approval. And at which point then we take the project to the state and we begin the process there. We look forward to that opportunity, and we're aware of those concerns. I don't think we take this lightly, the nature of the redevelopment. We're confident that with the right personnel, which we think we've employed, we'll get there. But the Waterfront Commission and Design Review, they've raised the same concerns that you have in terms of the propriety of the design, and we have to trust the experts and the processes in place and those stewards to make sure that it's done properly. And I just want to say that this is just the beginning of that process in terms of what that ultimate configuration will look like. Thank you very much, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Okay, before we get to the merits of the request that is actually pending before the planning board, can I get a motion to accept the staff's memorandum with the supporting attachments, the December 9th, 2024 memorandum from the Waterfront Commission, I'm sorry, from the Design Review Committee to the Waterfront Commission, the hearing panel, and the planning board. The Keep Metacomet Green memorandum and the statement from Mr. I'm gonna say your name. I hope not. Please take no offense, but was it Bodwin? Okay. Can I get a motion to accept the documents into the record? Motion by Mr. Miller, seconded by Mr. Gagnon. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. So the request that's before us is for an advisory opinion to the Waterfront Commission that the development as proposed is consistent with the purposes and intent of the city's comprehensive plan and section 1-2 of the general purposes of the subdivision and land development review regulation. I've been on this board a long time. I was certainly here in 2020, and I've been here throughout the life cycle of this development. I just fundamentally disagree with the representation that was made tonight, that this development will diminish the quality of life for those that live in East Providence. I just don't believe that to be true. I never have. From the beginning, I thought this was a good development. I thought it was a good use of otherwise private, underutilized land. I continue to believe that. I think this has been, these guys have done everything we've asked them to do at every step of the proceedings. This has been and continues to be, in my mind, responsible development. And I'm supporting it. And I think, I do believe, and I believe back in April when this was last before us, that this is consistent with the comprehensive plan and the subdivision and land development review regulations. I supported delaying at that time to obtain some additional information. They've provided that information to my satisfaction. So I support it. Happy to hear any other comments or discussion from board members.
Mr. Chairman, the last time this came up to vote, Well, no, before that, when it came in for the initial preliminary phase, I expressed my opposition to it, not because of some of the positions taken by the members of Keep Metacomet Green. They certainly have their right to their opinions. My feelings about it were that the planning department and the city was in the position to strike a better deal than they accepted. But I think one of the rules in life is you play with the team you've got, not the team you want. So I am going to vote for this to go forward.
Mr. Chair, I would just kind of like to express my opinions about what we heard tonight on the impact on Betts Parkway, as well as my opinion on what we're being asked to do tonight. Again, it's my personal opinion that the incorporation of widening Betts Parkway is ugly, and the addition of a rotary, I do not find to be appealing. And I think that we see examples in this city where widening the roads is like the first thing that we jump to, which begets more traffic, which then people will often complain about, and which does make safety issues and hazards. But what we're being asked tonight is if this project as presented to us is compliant with the city's 2010 to 2015 comprehensive plan. And I believe it is. Everything that we had planned or that comprehensive plan at that time, this is meeting and this is incorporating. And ultimately, as everyone said tonight, it is RIDOT's decision. It's a state road, and ultimately RIDOT had approved before the inclusion of a rotary. City had studied this. So I will be supporting the motion tonight.
If there's no further discussion, a motion would be in order.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a advisory recommendation to the DRC and the commission that the development is consistent with the purposes and intent of the city's 2010 to 2015 comprehensive plan and subdivision and land development review regulations.
Motion by Mr. Miller, seconded by Mr. Crook. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes. Thank you and continued good luck. We have one more item on our agenda tonight. That is approval of the 2025 Planning Board meeting calendar. We have a copy of that, understanding that these dates are all subject to change. Is there a motion to accept it such as it is?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Miller, seconded by Mr. Crook. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. And I'll just make an announcement that the next scheduled planning board meeting is January 13th, 2025. Keith, is there a staff report, or do you think we can forego that for 2024?
Nothing to report at 10:10 p.m.
Okay. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Miller, seconded by Ms. Rockwell. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.